Okay, I suppose there are a few topics I wanted to talk about, but I think this one I'm going to make about the concept of intelligence. See, because, I'm clearly pretty intelligent. Which I can't even say, jokingly, because my skeptical nature has gotten so extreme that I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea if I'm just saying obvious stuff all the time. I could be saying totally obvious shit. I have no idea. It scares me a lot, the concept of intelligence. I think, when I think about my intelligence, because I feel very lazy, I have the INTP type of intelligence, and I believe, if my own opinion can be trusted, I believe I'm pretty good at the idea of generalized intelligence as far as reality goes, whatever it is that we're experiencing. I think I have a good comprehension of that, although as far as self-awareness goes, it's funny, I would have said I'm extremely self-aware, and as far as my arguments go, and my logic goes, my psychological awareness and all that, I think I am pretty self-aware in a lot of ways, except the more self-aware you are, the more refined your view of things, the more specific. It's as if you can think in a circle, and as you form your ideas, it pinpoints in a certain direction. And I believe this would be the type of thing where shrooms, if I were to do hallucinogens, which I've never done, if I were to do those, I think it would fuck my pinpoint direction and show me that orb again. It would show me the purest orb, or point, maybe. Maybe normal people have their orb. I have my pinpoint, or most people probably have their directions. I have mine that's very rigid in its openness, which is scary. That's why it scares me. It's not always a person that has such an open perspective in such a rigid way. That's what makes me wonder, if I were to do hallucinogens, I think I might actually go insane. I think I might get into some sort of toxic psychosis or something. I have no idea. It's an unknown territory, and it frightens me because of that fact. But intelligence, I believe it's incredibly dynamic. There's no way to easily judge it with our human comprehension of these things. We're trying to understand the complexity of ourselves. There's that saying that if we were simple enough, if our brain was simple enough for us to understand it, we wouldn't. Because, we'd be too simple. But it's every dimension of intelligence is possible. Like if you think of a person who has wit, they're quick-witted. A quick-witted person has a certain type of intelligence. I imagine as if their brain is wired in a way that it can talk to itself very quickly, and it can interact with reactions quickly and respond to things quickly. I'm a very slow thinker. I don't think of things quickly most of the time. I can on occasion, but my brain just doesn't function like that, most likely due to training. I haven't focused on trying to be quick-witted in most ways, aside from just my generalized thought, the way I move from one topic to another, which in its own way is problematic for me, because it's hard for me to talk with people, because I'm constantly sort of driving into these totally unrelated discussions, and the average person will wonder what the fuck I'm talking about when I start making a metaphor for capitalism when we're discussing anything, literally anything. I could tie it back to the things that I hate. As far as my intelligence goes, I would have said in the past I would be more intelligent in the way that a human is intelligent over that of other animals, which it's problematic if you're a human with higher human metacognition. That would be the metacognition, that would be the capacity to think about thinking and think over your own thinking. It's the value in humanity, I believe, where we're able to engineer our reality in different ways, in ways that other animals cannot. That's a beautiful thing, but in my last video I mentioned the reasons why I believe we could destroy ourselves by disregarding the exponential evolutionary growth that got us here, all of the little microbial life that still exists around us. It never stops, and when we start killing these things randomly with antibiotics and whatnot, it can disrupt all of that. But our metacognition, if we are to think about what that is, the ability to think above something, when it's to the point that I'm at, it can get incredibly unhealthy. It is as if I am almost purely skeptical, almost a pure schizophrenic type of skepticism, where I will be a conspiracy theorist about plenty of things for logical reasons. But I believe it's tough to say which types of intelligence are valid. If everyone had my version of intelligence that I'm saying here, this metacognition, if everyone were further along in that idea, I believe we'd benefit from it. But I'm not the most likely person to reproduce. Not because, not even for reasons I would say would be offensive to me. It's just the fact that I don't necessarily want to have a kid. I think it's too much of a responsibility, and anyone in their right mind should see that. They should see the immense undertaking it is to raise a person into the world. But the people who reproduce just do it. They sort of go with the animal instincts and just follow the process. And that does not result in a lot of people like me, I don't think. But this metacognition, it has a lot of advantages. But I believe the further you take it, it can get to this point where it is just self-destructive. It's almost complete disconnect from humanity. Like, I've thought so much about so many things. This is sort of the issue with intelligence even. I think the smartest people, those Einsteins that arise. I remember an article about a kid who killed himself. He was like 13 or 14 or something, 13, 14, 15. He killed himself. He had like graduated college and he was extremely beyond the intelligence of any average person. far beyond it. And he killed himself. I saw that on Facebook, and I saw someone saying, well, I guess he's not that smart now, is he? And that just irked the fuck out of me, because I believe, just from my perspective, I don't even think I'm intelligent in most ways, as I figured out from Jordan Peterson, since I relate to him so much, or I felt I related to him so much. Like, listening to him is like hearing my brain think, or my own thinking thought processes, my speaking, whatever, when I go through ideas like this. He reminds me so much of myself, and he said he was like 99th percentile or something in verbal intelligence, as far as quantitative intelligence, which I guess is specific types of knowledge. He was like 70-something, which is good compared to many people, but nowhere near being the 99th percentile. So I imagine verbal intelligence is what I have as far as that measurement goes. And that's where my metacognition goes into effect, where I've thought so much about things and argued with so many people for so long. My training, the knowledge I've trained into myself, is just generalized logic, where I can argue with anyone about anything and always sort of convince myself I'm right, and just because I have the ability to manipulate all the thoughts in my mind and create a sort of logical example. And that's the reason I am so skeptical, and so I guess why I trust my views more than most people, because I don't trust them. I don't let them sit there. I immediately question all my own views all the time. I constantly question them. So when something sort of arises from that, it's like basically the concept of science is based on experiment, and if anything doesn't add up, you test it. If it's not adding up, you throw it out. You just redo it. Change the entire whatever. If you can figure out the variables that are distorting different things, that's the way science functions, and my mind functions in that sense, except it's all like the nuance of my own knowledge and my own perception of things, which is incredibly open for bias, which is why I try to dissolve so many of my own ideas all the time, sort of dissolve them down to the base elements so I can understand exactly what it is I'm looking at, not something that I'm approaching with too much bias. It's impossible to avoid bias, but in my state, I would trust my lack of bias more than most people, especially since I've gained the concept of the polarity I talk about so often. It's the yin and yang concept, where there's always a balance, there's always two forces, there's always a competition that reaches some sort of symbiotic balance. Or if it doesn't, if there's too much turmoil in the competition, as with a society that has the leaders that persecute the majority, it doesn't reach a balance because the majority don't like being farmed. Eventually they get to a point where they sense the discomfort that they've slowly been accustomed to and trained into, and they rebel. So instead of the balanced, smooth flow, there's a clashing. It's like waves clashing together. From the very start of all these videos I made, I put the toxic relationship concept. It's where you have intensity and passion, and you clash together and flow apart, clash together, flow apart. You have those breakups and the breaks, and then you get back together, and there's love and passion. So much intensity until eventually you just flow apart. And it's not as harmful as losing someone that you still love. And you may still love them in some sense, but the clashing and the destruction over time. That's what makes it seem a little easier. So within all things, there's a balance. One of the ideas I refer to a lot is that I believe the political system in America is using the balance of the sexes to influence, to sort of engineer a truly self-sustaining type of flow. It's the essence of humanity is male and female. We've made it work until this point that we are in existence. Therefore, there could be no better example of how to divide us into two groups. That would be Democrats and Republicans right now. The way the left and right work, it's so incredible how well they can keep us divided by keeping us focused on the nature of the Republicans and their assertiveness and all that, and the Democrats and their inherent value and the pro-feminism, as they would say. But as I ramble well beyond whatever the fuck I was talking about, allow me to backtrack for a moment, back to the concept of intelligence. I forgot where I was going with that thought, what I had branched off from, but there's the metacognition, and I'm not even sure that is what I would say my intelligence was originally. I think it's possible I've trained myself into this intelligence. I mean, I always felt that intelligence inside me, but I couldn't verbalize it. I wasn't the verbal person that I am now. I didn't have the verbal intelligence that I have now because there hadn't been the pressure for me to train myself into being intelligent in that sense, in that communicative sense. And I believe the pressure, the trait of myself that allowed me that resulted in me feeling this type of pressure to result in me having this type of verbal intelligence would be sensitivity. I think I'm just incredibly sensitive. I feel much more extreme feelings about things than it seems a lot of people tend to. I feel like most moments I'm in this sort of probably overly tense, sort of anxious, fight or flight type of response. Probably why I'm so mentally unwell, because of my extreme anxiety. I don't know how long I can sustain being like this. There's this state of so much tension and fear about so many things. But I don't think I'm wrong. I think there are many things we need to fear. And I think this is the pressure that pushed me towards being more expressive. Because I have these feelings, these strong feelings about so many things, and now I am capable of asserting all of that. Intelligence, it's a strange thing. There are so many different directions it can go. It can go into specific areas of knowledge. It can go into just generalized memory. It can go into so many different areas. The issue I think most people have is they're not as general as I am. I wish there were more really specifically knowledgeable people who had as much generalized logic and intensity as I feel I have. It makes me really wonder about Jordan Peterson. I feel like someone like him, the way when I watch him, he does have such an intensity about him. He's very intense in a very opposite direction of me, which was uncomfortable when I saw his anti-Marxist views, or maybe he was mentioning cultural Marxism at the time, I'm not sure, but it's strange that he's in Canada where they have universal health care or single payer, and he's against seemingly uniting to better society together when he's got certain things like that in his society already. I wonder if he would be against that. I wonder if he supports the idea of social unity and strengthening and regulations of that type. Because he's an intelligent person. He's got so much intensity about things. I'm afraid he's missing the polarity. I feel like he's missing me. He's missing the polar side of his views, which would be me. I saw him from a distance, so it gave me the ability to clash with my own ideas and find a middle ground. I wonder what he would think if we spoke. But it feels like there truly needs to be I don't even know. I don't even know what type of intelligence would need to be in the world. Because, as I said, people like me aren't going to be the ones reproducing, so what does that mean for the future? That means that we'll still have to rely on random people arising from reactionaries, random outliers, and that won't form a culture of intelligence. Our current culture seems to be very anti-intellectual, and I'm partly assuming that's based on propaganda or influences of covert operations. Definitely propaganda, though. They want to keep us on simple topics. They want to keep us focused on things that are easy to digest, that don't make us think that much, that we can focus on the people rather than the ideas themselves. They don't want us to think about the logic. So, that's intelligence. I suppose I do see a lot of anti-intellectualism on the internet, which bothers me a lot. I've noticed there's all the ad hominem attacks that are baseless and just essentially nothing. Calling someone edgy, saying so brave, that was one for a long time. There's now they'll link you, on Reddit at least, they'll link you to the I am very smart subreddit, where they mock anyone who gives off the pretentiousness of a smart person but doesn't seem to actually be smart. When a lot of the time it's contextually focused in such a way you can't actually tell if the person's intelligent or not from just by looking at it. So it's really petty anti-intellectualism. It's horribly misguided. Just these knee-jerk subreddits, these knee-jerk topics all over the internet that just focus us onto the simplicity, the most simple attacks on individuals or on ideas, such simple attacks that don't contribute to any sort of unity with people. They don't merge any ideas. They don't flow in healthy directions. They create a vicious cycle of attacking and hating. Simple-minded hate. This is one of the reasons I feel so separated from people. Because anytime you talk about anything intellectual, a lot of people will say, it's too much, you can't think like that, it's just way over everyone's head, it's not realistic, it's not pragmatic, all these types of things. But they themselves will give in to any number of petty, tedious little knee-jerk concepts based on the same type of issues. They'll just take the simplified, easily digestible garbage information and spray that all over, spread the hate. They just cannot somehow take the time to look into things a little bit deeper. The way I am right now, I would be the enemy of every view, every possible view. I would be the enemy because I would see the imbalance in a person's assertions, and I would attack that. No matter what, I would see the imbalance, which means, number one, attacking the imbalance is boring. No one wants their own views criticized either. So it's boring. It seems like an attack still, and it's focused on both sides. So they would immediately designate me as someone from the other tribe rather than someone from within their own group, which is what I would always be trying to do. I would try to say, I'm one of you. We need to lift our own group up by following the healthiest path. Like, of course, I identify more with things like the left-wing side of things. But if I only support that side, like, if you look at the political just nonsense, the first past the post system, it gets down to this just state where rather than focusing on hating your own group to build yourself up, they focus on hating the absolute worst person on the other side. I've seen two... hold on, let me look this up. I saw 2 articles on Reddit recently. Two articles which were by the name of... Okay, here's one. Article titled, Donald Trump's only policy agenda seems to be undo Obama stuff. What does that do? What does that propaganda create? What it does is it creates the illusion of competition between the parties. They didn't just mention Trump this time. They mentioned Obama, the guy who dropped 26,000 bombs last year. So not only do they say Trump bad, they say Obama good. So they enforce the illusion that the imperialist left is better than the imperialist right. There's also another one. European diplomats reportedly consider Trump a laughingstock who is obsessed with Obama. So they mention Trump. They mention Europeans, who the millennials would be more relative toward valuing their opinions. And they say obsessed with Obama to further solidify the internalized vicious cycle of the left versus right. It's not, they don't want anyone to think, say, Bernie Sanders could have been the president instead of Trump. They want us to think, compare Trump to our establishment left candidates that we used to have. He's so much worse then don't you remember the good old days when we had Obama and he was nice and he only bombed people that like without anyone really mentioning it that much? And it's imperialism, different flavors of imperialism. There's a picture I keep posting that shows Trump, and it's like full strength imperialism. Then it shows Obama, imperialism, L-I-T-E, light. And it shows Hillary, and it said imperialism for her. That's really what it is. That's what they want us to focus on, as if there is no alternative to the establishment candidates, as if the establishment left candidates are truly a huge step up from Trump. When realistically, all the things that come up are just so petty. So petty. Little, it's like they're advertising. That's all it ever is. Trump gets in, his goal is to advertise for the next Obama. Then when Obama gets in, what's his goal? Obama 2.0, what's his goal? It's going to be waste money. Do the things that Republicans hate so that it inspires the next Republican candidate. And as long as they lock us to the two parties, we will always be fighting for something just slightly, any perceptible illusion of difference better than the worst thing possible to us. So it's like Trump is the worst thing possible. Anything even remotely better than him would be a better alternative to Trump. And that's what we get. We get anything that's remotely better. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating to see all of these things. And then to see the anti-intellectualism. To see people somehow fighting the chance to just think a little bit, to look into things, to understand the truth, to understand the power of the people above us. We've allowed them so much room. Might as well include my conspiracy theory in here. Since the Trump stuff, the Russia stuff came up, I've been saying that it was fake. It's continued, it has progressed in people's minds, and I'm still saying it's fake. I believe Trump was working with the Democrat side. I believe he was their Pied Piper. I believe he organized with Hillary so that he could help her get into office. And then when the leaks came out, I believe Julian Assange threatened the establishment so much, so deeply, that there was a point where WikiLeaks was just kind of taken over and things seemed weird. And after that, there seemed a lot like subtle defenses of Russia and stuff. After that point, things that were just obvious and seemed obvious. But it was after that point. It was after the point they seemed to get commandeered by some secret American powers. But before that, the WikiLeaks leaks, the Podesta emails, the DNC emails, they gave us very clear evidence that the media, along with the Democrat establishment candidates, were working together to basically cheat themselves into popularity and win. Remove our true freedom to choose a candidate and just select them for us, force that on us. And so many people are so used to that truth that they didn't even care. It's like, yeah, we got money in politics, but What's wrong with that? It's just, we just got capitalism, so that's how it works, right? I think the Trump-Russia stuff popped up specifically because they were so afraid of what could be shown by the leaks. The establishment was so afraid that they wanted to highlight Trump, continue highlighting Trump rather, because they were focused on Trump so much. Every little thing he did, that's all they would talk about. Nothing about Sanders. Barely anything about Hillary. All they would say is Hillary's winning and Trump is the alternative. Let's help Hillary because she's the only option that can ever defeat him. She's the only possibility. Oh, blah, blah. And she lost. Trump won. I believe it's possible they intentionally had Trump win, because if Hillary would have won, the focus would have been on those emails. The focus would have been on the corruption that got her into that office. Now, since Trump won, they get to say it was Russia. They get to specifically construct whatever they want now. I think the entire Russia thing was made up, and now they're specifically creating each little detail to float us toward believing this stuff. And it's functioning like a conspiracy theorist. The media just blared it on for so long, even without any new added information, anything like that. They just blared it for so long, and I knew that's what they were going to do. It's the Hitler idea: repeat a lie long enough and eventually people will believe it. That's the truth of it. I thought that before I saw it happening, before it got this far along, well before it got this far along. I knew they were going to keep the Russia thing going, because it's exactly what they did with terrorism. Terrorism, war, terrorism, terrorist attacks, 9/11, terrorism, 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 terrorism. These terrorists. We ran off to a war that didn't make any fucking sense. They literally advertised us into this state where it was normal. And right now, what they're advertising is that we can't trust leaks. The only possible way we could have ever gotten actual information about corruption in our government was through leaks. And now we've got a cyber Cold War with Russia that will invalidate all possible evidence. Every possible leak will be called a Russian plant, anything like that. That's all it'll take. I think the DNC or the establishment, the oligarchy, probably did kill Seth Rich. I believe he was probably the one who leaked it. I think Julian Assange was very clearly implying this because he was trusted at that time, and he should be considered a trusted person. And all this stuff is just falling apart. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but we are giving our government people who are not trustworthy. They are not good people. They are lying to us in so many different ways. They keep this drug war going. They're murdering people on one side of the planet who could just be us. They could be us. The people that they're killing with these bombs. They clearly do lack a conscience about the decisions they make, because they want money. They want profit. They don't want to go to jail. And they will create any illusion necessary in order to retain their power. That's what I believe, and I think we're seeing them use all of their skills, their tactics that they have in their arsenal. Under capitalism, under the political system that we have in place, the popularity contest linked to capitalism, it's the benefit of the abuser. It's all the tactics within the control of an abuser. If you think about the male animal, you think about what is required to reproduce. You could lie. You can pretend you're strong. You can manipulate someone. You can coerce someone. You can force things on someone. There are all sorts of horrible, horrible things you can do as a male. And that is the arsenal of any person trying to rise in the political system, democracy under capitalism. They have every tool. They have the influences of money to strengthen themselves, to get things done, anything, to murder, to lie, to spread the lies, to completely deny something. Someone who rapes someone, imagine they had a massive media propaganda machine to just pump out information that it wasn't true, to blind us, to divert the knowledge in some obscure way, like to say the girl had connections to some sort of exploitation thing herself, where she's specifically lying about it to get some advantage. And things like that are possible. But there are always two sides to every situation. It could always go both ways. But I think when we've got this capitalist political system, it's pretty obvious the ways that it's going. It's pretty obvious we can't trust these people. We need to stay skeptical of them. This is the state of humanity. When I look at us and I see all these simple flaws, these imbalances, and just these ignorant loops that we get stuck in, I have a hard time enjoying anything. It's like when you truly see these things, who could I care about? Who could I connect with? These things are so simple and just basic flaws in us. I don't feel close to someone unless they acknowledge these realities, unless they acknowledge that they would try, they would be a component to work against these things if they had the capacity to. Because if you can't even do that, if you can't even say that you would be an active entity working against these flaws if you had the power, then you're just proving yourself to be just another simple, flowing flaw. And it's proving that the human animal is really just a product of its situation. If I were rich, I wouldn't be sitting here doing this. I wouldn't be sitting here talking about empathy. That's the scary part. How rare it is for a person to be pressured by all the right things and then somehow have the power still to do anything, knowing all the forces that would be against them. For me, it's easy to do this because I know no one gives a fuck about my ideas. I know this video will get a few views, if that, but things to consider, because I know I'm going to. I know I'm going to keep considering them. I know these thoughts are just stuck in my mind, perpetually looping in the hope that I figure out what it would take to fix anything.